Tennessee This Week from WATE 6 on your side starts now.
Hello and welcome to Tennessee This Week. I'm Blake Stevens. A few weeks from now will mark the end of an era with Lamar Alexander no longer Tennessee's senator. He served as U.S. Secretary of Education, President of the University of Tennessee, and Governor of Tennessee, a record of public service stretching across more than 4 decades. I sat down with the outgoing senator to look back. An exit interview for Tennessee's longest-serving statewide official. So we've got a lot to talk about, but before I ask you my questions, I kind of want to open the floor and ask you, is there anything on your mind to say?
What a privilege it's been. I know that people must look at politics today and think, oh my goodness, let's hide the children, but that's not really the way I feel. I mean, I suggest you look at Washington, D.C. as a split-screen TV, and on the one side you see all the pandemonium and tweets and confirmation process, and on the other side, what you don't see as often is senators working together to pass the Great American Outdoors Act to help the Smokies, to build up the Oak Ridge Laboratory, to fix No Child Left Behind, to help songwriters be paid fairly. That's going on. So I get up almost every day thinking I have a chance to do something to help the country, and I go to bed most nights thinking I have. So it's, what I'd like people to know is that it's been a real privilege to be a United States Senator.
Is there a bit of advice in there for us to maybe don't always focus on the bad?
Well, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. I mean, if an airplane crashes, that's news. If it takes off safely, it's not. I understand that. It's not as spectacular. But I've never wanted to see how much news I could make by taking the headline of the day and taking the most extreme position on it. What I felt I should do is work with the president or of either party, whether it's President Obama or President Trump, wherever I could to help the country succeed, and I think I've been able to do that.
And I do want to talk about your time in the Senate a little further. I do have some, I guess, current event questions that I'd like to knock out. And the first being the race for the White House. I know you've been asked this. Sure. Given what we now know from Georgia, given the recent news out of Pennsylvania from multiple judges, I mean, this morning, do you consider Joe Biden president-elect?
Well, the race is rapidly coming to a formal end. The states are finishing recounts, courts resolving disputes. Most states will have certified their votes by December 8th, and since it appears that Joe Biden apparently will be the president-elect, I think it's important that President Trump take pride in his accomplishments, say to President-elect Biden, if he turns out to be on December 14 when the electors meet, congratulations, and have a prompt and orderly transition to help him succeed.
You said take pride in his accomplishments. That leads me to my next question. How do you rank the last 4 years?
Let's take specific things depending on your point of view. I think the president can be proud of his large number of conservative judges. By that I mean those who will follow the law instead of make it up. Lower taxes, fewer regulations, great economy before COVID hit. And even though we've all struggled with COVID, what's happened in the development of vaccines that are 95% effective within 8 months instead of 8 years is also a great accomplishment. So I think he's had a number of significant accomplishments that he can be proud of if he turns out to be a one-term president.
When I think about Tennessee's first 2-term governor, Secretary of Education, candidate for president twice, and then of course your time in the Senate, my question is why? What is it about public service in you that says keep going?
Well, we're sitting here in Maryville High School. I grew up 2.5 blocks from here, went to church across the street. I mean, my parents taught me that life is a gift and you're supposed to make something of it. And they taught me to respect public service. My dad took me to the courthouse to meet Howard Baker Sr. when I was 10 years old. He was our congressman then. And I thought I had just met the most important person I was ever likely to meet other than my father and the preacher. So I was raised to respect our country, follow good values and to respect public service. So when I had a chance or an aptitude to be elected to something, I thought, well, here's my chance to do something good. Hopefully leave some footprints that help the state, help the country.
Class of 1958?
Class of 1958.
You were class president?
Yes.
So from class president here in Maryville to presidential candidate to working with several presidents, I mean, does it ever come as a shock to you, all that you've been able to do in your career?
Not a shock, but I think how lucky I've been. I mean, I've had the best seat in the House for a long time. I mean, I've watched Tennessee over the last 40 years go from low family incomes, poor roads, low aspirations to confidence. Number one auto state in many ways, best roads in many ways. I've had a chance to work with several presidents to fix No Child Left Behind, to help the parks, which I love, the Smoky Mountains.
I was looking back at your time as governor. You were sworn in early because of the controversy going on with Governor Blanton. The Democrats really were a big part of getting you sworn in early. Any parallel? So that's proof that things haven't always been roses. There's always been a little controversy. And do you see any parallels between '79 and 2020?
I think they're different. The parallel I'd like to see more of is the attitude that Ned McWhorter, who was the Democratic Speaker, took when I was elected governor. Everybody down in Nashville was a Democrat then. I was this upstart new 38-year-old Republican governor, and the reporters said, well, Mr. Speaker, what are you going to do with this new young Republican governor? He said, I'm going to help him, because if he succeeds, our state succeeds. And I'd like to see President Trump say that to President-elect Biden if that's the way it turns out after December 14. Because that's what Obama said to President Trump. Our country succeeds when our president succeeds, which is when people wonder why I work with President Obama, because he has liberal policies. I want him to succeed wherever we can agree. And same with President Trump, even though I may not agree with all of his behavior, I want him to succeed for our country. And we should all want that for our presidents.
That willingness to work with lawmakers from the other party is why many political pundits consider Alexander a moderate.
I don't think of myself as moderate. I'm result-oriented. I like to make things happen. So if I want to fix No Child Left Behind in the United States Senate, I have to get Democrats to work with me to do that. That doesn't make me moderate. I've still got conservative principles. They've probably got liberal principles, but I want to get a result. Same with the 21st Century Cures. Same with the Great American Outdoors Act. We had a group of maybe 10 senators, half Republican, half Democrat, who worked together with President Trump to do it. That didn't make us moderates. It just made us wanting to do something for the good of the country.
What does the future look like for uninsured Americans? I mean, Tennessee still has hundreds of thousands of people with no insurance. And the option to expand Medicaid is still there. We'll see what happens in the next legislative session, but all that costs money. What is the solution to get more Americans insured?
Well, one solution is for Tennessee to take advantage of the federal Medicaid law, because in a quirk of the law, because the state didn't expand Medicaid, the people who are left out of health insurance are the poorest people, the people who you'd want to help first. The second is to lower the cost of insurance for those people who don't have Obamacare subsidies, the farmer, the independent contractor, the songwriter who might be paying $20,000 a year for their insurance. I had a bill to do that, all worked out with Senator Murray and the Democrats, and it got stuck at the very end over the politics of abortion, unfortunately. It was the best bill I worked on in the last 18 years that didn't become law. President Trump was very helpful with it, we just couldn't get it done.
You, many times over the last 4 years, have pushed back on things you didn't agree with that the administration might be doing. Immigration ban on Muslim majority countries, the national emergency declaration, and most recently what happened in Ukraine. You voted not for impeachment, but you did condemn the president for the call. And I'm just curious how difficult that is in your position, representing a state where that administration is so popular.
Well, I just tried to do what's right. I learned a long time ago that you can't make everybody happy. And so when the tough one comes up, I just say, okay, what would be the right thing to do? That may sound very naive, but it's usually the best usually the best guide. It's not very hard to do that. And what I hope is that Tennesseans respect me for trying to do the right thing. They may disagree with me, or they may agree with me. But for example, in the impeachment, I thought President Trump's call was completely inappropriate. You don't call up the president of another country and try to get him to investigate your possible opponent, and it's clear he did it. But I also thought it was clear that that's not grounds to impeach him, take him from office, and take him off the ballot. I thought we should leave to the people that decision, and that was especially true because the impeachment was so partisan. Unlike the Nixon impeachment when Republicans and Democrats were involved, in this case it was just an all-Democrat show, and if you do that coming over from the House, you're going to get a partisan response from the Senate. I do know that when I said that I thought he did it, but he shouldn't be impeached for it, that a great number of the other senators agreed with me, even though they didn't say it.
While he leaves a seemingly divided Washington, he says history tells us that isn't a recent development.
We have to learn to live with the internet democracy. I mean, what's really different today is not the politics, not the acrimony. If you go back in Tennessee, Parson Brownlow's daily comments around the Civil War era were every bit as abrasive as President Trump's. And even the founders, Jefferson and Adams, had as big differences of opinion as politicians in Washington do today. But we didn't have an iPhone to tweet it out to 72 million people at once. And somehow we've got to learn to live with that, because that drives the political parties to the left and to the right. It makes it hard to talk to each other and hard to work in the middle. It still can be done. I do it every day, and so do lots of other senators. But it's harder to do. But on the other hand, no one should think that this is the first time our country's ever been divided. We've always been divided. I mean, we've had more diversity than any other country in the world. But what's different about us is we have been the one country that's taken all that diversity and turned it into one country. And that should be the challenge. You know, our motto is E pluribus unum. We need a little less pluribus and a little more unum.
Will you miss D.C.?
No, not really. I'll miss the friendships. I'll miss getting up every day and thinking I could do something important for the country, and going to bed most nights thinking I have. But I'm looking forward to being back in Blount County.
Well, Senator Alexander's seat is going to a fellow Republican, Bill Hagerty, who previously served as Tennessee's Commissioner of Economic and Community Development and U.S. Ambassador to Japan. Well, coming up next, our panel of pundits looks back at Senator Alexander's career. You're watching Tennessee This Week on WATE 6 on your side. Let's get started here. We've got our panel of pundits with us. George Corda, our political analyst, Craig Griffith, our healthcare expert, and Courtney Piper, our political contributor. All right, a few days after Thanksgiving, once this airs. So happy belated Thanksgiving to you all.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Thank you so much. I'm thankful for my employment here and Tennessee this week. So you guys saw my interview with Lamar Alexander, who is getting ready to leave the spotlight after more than 40 years of public service. My question to all of you is how will Senator Alexander be remembered? George, we'll start with you.
He's going to be remembered as being of inestimable value to the state of Tennessee. I want to tell three really quick stories about Lamar Alexander. When I was a 27, 28-year-old, pretty new spokesman for state government, I got called up to the governor's conference room along with a bunch of other people. He was wanting something discussed by the state government communications about his Better Schools program. And we'd been talking about better schools till we thought it was coming out of our ears. So as we were leaving, I stopped by the door where the governor was standing, and I said, "Governor, is it possible that you can say things so often that the public gets sick of it?" And he said, "George, just about the time you think you're going to throw up, if you say it one more time, they're just starting to hear it." And that made a profound impression on me. And then in the 90s, I worked with him on a project for the better part of a year, and we used to meet pretty regularly. And we would sit sometimes over a written piece and discuss a single sentence, sometimes a single word, for 20, 30 minutes or more until he had exactly the sentence and exactly the word that he wanted to convey what he wanted people to see and to hear about his program. And then, about a sense of humor, one day we were walking up to the front of his house in Nashville, and there were workmen coming out of the thing like ants out of an anthill, through the front doors, hanging out the windows, off the roof. And I said to him, "Have you ever seen a Tom Hanks movie called The Money Pit?" He didn't look left or right. He stared straight ahead, and he said, "That's not one bit funny, George." And I said, "You're right. I could bite my tongue for saying it." And that made him laugh. But he's an extraordinary political figure in the history of this state, and his contributions cannot be fully measured, and Tennessee is the poorer for him not being in the Senate.
All right, Greg, how do you think Senator Alexander will be remembered?
Well, of course, he transitions to be the elder statesman of Tennessee. I first gained knowledge of him during the Ray Blanton pardon issue. And now I know people that actually were in the room when he was sworn in, and they felt in that room that they were making history, that they were reaching across the aisle to do the right thing. And I think that's the philosophy he had while governing and into the Senate. And, I detected a bit of sadness in his interview, lamenting the social media age. And I don't think he understands how that's all going to work out in the end, nor do many of us figure out how it's going to work out in the end. But his contributions to Tennessee are legendary, and we will see them all across. And they will be put into almost geological terms because of the efforts he made in improving the Great Smokies National Park. So I salute him for a job well done, and wish we had more of him coming up the pipe.
Courtney, I see you nodding your head in agreement.
Senator Alexander is going to be sorely missed by all Tennesseans. He was extraordinarily passionate about science and education, and the long-lasting impacts that he has made to the state of Tennessee related to some of our larger research assets and education will be felt for decades to come. What he has done to increase Tennessee and East Tennessee in particular, and put us on a national stage when it comes to science, energy, and innovation is unparalleled. I can't see anybody else doing that. The way that he advocated for federal programs, and therefore the people that came with the programs, the talent that comes with those programs, nobody else can fill those shoes. And he was right in his interview. He is a problem solver, and we are missing that in the United States Senate today. He wanted to solve problems and get results, and he always thought about his constituents back home. And that is going to be sorely missed by all Tennesseans in the United States Senate.
All right, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we'll continue talking about Senator Alexander, and I'll ask the pundits what they're thankful for this holiday season. Stay with us, everybody. All right, welcome back. You know, earlier, Craig, you mentioned in that interview, Senator Alexander talked about the division we see around the country. But I heard him say that we could fix it if we figure out how to live in the what he called the internet democracy. So to me, he seemed to be hopeful. But I'm curious from the three of you, when he talks about Democrats and Republicans working together on issues, are we going to see more of that, or are we going to see less of that, Craig?
Well, I hope we see more of that. The problems of the nation require bipartisan solutions, but I'm not sure that we're going to. The issue now is most of these people will stay in office for as long as they want. They're very rarely challenged. But when they're challenged in a primary, not in a general election. They're challenged by someone either to their way left or to their way right. And I don't see that changing because of the way the internet can, through its algorithms, promote particular positions. So, you know, as I've said many times on this program, in Washington, compromise is a four-letter word. And if Lamar has projects and policies he thinks that can get us above that, I certainly hope he publishes them.
Courtney, what do you think? Do you think that do you think we're more divided now than ever, and do you think we can get over this going forward?
Yes, we are divided. We are extraordinarily divided. And I really can't tell you, Blake, how the future will play out. I've asked myself this several times if I think there are going to be more bipartisan solutions. Are the days of saying, "Hey, I find bipartisan solutions to get things done," is that no longer a victory for a politician? Does that somehow give you a black mark on your record if you are bipartisan, if you like to reach across the aisle? And I really can't tell. You know, to a certain extent, the president of the United States sets the tone of our nation when it comes to politics, governing, and negotiating. And it remains to be seen how President-elect Biden will set that tone and how folks in the Senate and also in the Congress will follow suit. So there's just so many unknowns, it's really hard to predict.
George, I'm curious from you, if a Senator Lamar Alexander today, without that 40 years under his belt, if a Senator Lamar Alexander were running for that office today, how would he fare in today's climate?
Well, yeah, you have to have some sort of bona fide conservative credentials to run in Tennessee, be taken seriously. But Tennessee doesn't typically elect people who are, look at Governor Lee or Lamar or Bill Frist. They're kind of centrist in a way, centrist right. And in terms of being divided, oh heck, we've been divided worse than this in the past. I've got a few more miles on me than most of you here. And I can remember the anti-war riots of the 1960s and the race riots when a different American city was burning down every week. And when it comes to being divided, I think we can probably look at the Civil War and 600,000 dead Americans as an example of we have been more divided. So I think the issue going forward in terms of bringing people together comes to a quote from the late Senator Everett Dirksen of Illinois, which is, "When I feel the heat, I see the light." In this past election, there were supposed to be models predicted to pick up 15 seats in the House for the Democrats. I think they've lost, at this moment, 13, flipped Republican. And a lot more Republican women are going to be in the House. They narrowed that gap. Now, if Democrats look at that and see that there is a percentage in working with Republicans to avoid being killed, figuratively speaking, in 2022, they'll do it. If they think the partisanship is what's going to help them most being reelected, they won't do it. And the same thing goes true for the Republicans. So it's a matter of politics. It's not necessarily a matter of principle.
All right, hey, and putting politics aside, we just passed a major holiday in our country. George, what are you thankful for this Thanksgiving?
That we can do this by Zoom, so we don't have to drive all the way down to the station. That's one thing.
And you don't have to put on a tie.
That's right, no ties. And I naturally, you get family and home, and the older I get, the more important that becomes. It's kind of a buzzword, a trite thing to do, but somebody asked me one time, what would you want on your tombstone? It would be, he was a husband, a father, a follower of God, and nothing else really mattered.
Craig, your thoughts?
Well, of course, thankful for my family, my grandson, everybody's COVID-free so far. Thankful for all the first responders, the people's in the hospital, the police and firemen that have done exemplary work throughout this pandemic, and also to the people in the food supply, food chain that have kept the store stocked and done the thousands of things that needed to be done to keep the country going. And so it's a long list, and thankful to our viewers for watching this program.
All right, Courtney, we end with you.
I too am thankful for the viewers watching this program. Blake, I'm thankful for you for offering to host sometimes this madhouse. We appreciate it. But I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for my friends. I'm thankful for my job and to be employed. So, lots of thanks to go all the way around this year.
All right. And I'm thankful for the three of you. Thankful to all our viewers. We'll see you the same time right here on Tennessee This Week. Thanks for watching, everybody.
The views of guests on Tennessee This Week are their own and do not represent the views of WATE 6 on your side or Next Star Broadcasting.